This is going to be my support tier list for patch 13.4. As always, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you have not done so already and you go on to enjoy this video. As you can see on the screen already here, I've already ranked every single support champion in the game that's had a decent play rate or higher, according to win rate. So this is the day before the patch. This is as accurate data as you could possibly get. Up in the broken category, we have 54% win rate or higher. Strong is 52 to 53, average 50 to 51, weak is 48 to 49, and on the bench champions we should never be touching in the support role right now, 47% and lower. What I'm going to be doing is going over the changes that we have in patch 13.4 and kind of taking some estimated guesses as far as how that's going to impact the meta and how that's going to shift champions as far as, if they're going to go from average to strong or broken to weak, or, even if there's adjustments in their tier as, just average, for example. So, this is in order of win rate. So, for example, even though all these champions are in average, as far as 50 to 51% win rate, Nico has the highest. That's going to be like high 51s. Morgana is going to be the lowest. That's going to be like low 50s. So I'm going to be taking a look at the patch notes, taking a look at all the changes to the support role and to specific support champions, and making guesses on how that's going to impact these champions in the next patch. So typically we do see some like item changes, and we see a lot of buffs and nerfs, but this patch specifically is going to be heavily impacting the support role because there are, I think, 4 or 5 champions in the support role that are buffed, nerfed, and adjusted that I'll go on later, and that will impact those champions specifically. But this change right here is going to be kind of shifting the whole meta as a whole. Right, has already kind of come out and said that they think there are some enchanter supports that are just kind of dominating the game a little too much. I think off the top of my head, they're kind of addressing the pro scene, stuff like Nami, Lulu. Sometimes when those champions are banned out, people are now starting to pick up Soraka and Sona. I think overall they just think that range enchanters have too much of an advantage right now. You can even look at some ADCs have been playing support recently in professional play. You've seen Varus support, you've seen Caitlyn support, Ashe support is very commonly seen. So overall, they think that range supports are too strong and melee supports don't really have a spot in the meta right now. And that's what this change is going to be trying to address, taking down some of the range supports, but also trying to buff up some of the melee supports. I do feel as though they might have overdone it a little bit here. I think that when you're trying to balance things, sometimes it's a better direction to go when it comes to just nerfing one side, not nerfing one side and buffing the other side at the same time. That might kind of flip flop the meta. I am a little worried about that, and that's kind of what they're doing here. But we'll have to just go on and see. So the ranged items, Spell Thieves and Spectral, they are not only increasing the timer as far as how often you can get gold from these items from 10 to 12 seconds. Honestly, not that big of a deal. You just have to wait a couple seconds to, look for trades to try to get some gold in the early game. But the big thing here is going to be the mana regen on these items is being taken down, especially early game. So Spell Thieves is going from 50 to 25%, so you're getting half of the usage out of that now. Later on in the game, it goes from 75 to 50. So it's going to be, looks like a 25% difference there, and then a 15% difference when you get your Shard True Ice. Kind of the same thing here with the Spectral. It's going from 50 to 25. So really early game is when you're going to notice the biggest difference here. That being able to get gold not as often is going to be like a small change. I don't think that'll hurt too much. But the mana regen, being able to use your abilities as often, that part's really going to hurt. And I guess that does make sense as far as why they're targeting these champions, the ranged champions. I think the main issue with range supports right now, and why you're seeing all these different range supports or range champions in the support role, is because everybody's in the pro scene at least is looking for range champions that can push in waves really quick, and you can't really push in waves without using your abilities. So they're trying to get rid of the mana regen so you can't spam its ability or spam abilities and push in waves as much. So that's the whole idea there. And overall, I'll go back here in a second and I'll kind of adjust things a little bit. But for the most part, we are going to be seeing range supports, both AD and the AP enchanters coming down a little bit. And then we'll see some of the tanks coming up because, as you see here, Relic Shield and Shoulder Guards are going to be getting buffed here. So they're basically just taking a look at the HP regen and pretty drastic differences here. They should be able to take more damage early game and be able to regen a little bit of that back. That has been one of the issues in the past when it comes to melee supports against the range supports. It's usually kind of a matchup as far as, the melee supports need to engage before they get poked down, and the range supports need to poke the engaged supports before they get engaged on. With these changes, the range supports now have less mana regen to be able to poke as frequently, and the tank supports now have more HP regen, where if they do get poked, they should be fine. So again, we should be seeing a pretty big shift in the meta here, considering they're nerfing one side and buffing one side. I don't think it's going to flip flop the meta, but hopefully, if they have kind of estimated things correctly, we should see a meta in which you can see enchanters and melee supports in the same game at the same time. That is the ultimate goal. But we'll just have to see. I don't know if this is too much of an over adjustment. Up next, we have some changes to Senna. So as I was saying, range supports have been kind of prominent in the meta recently. They have been a bit too strong, but when it does come to range support, Senna hasn't been one that's been super popular. You don't see her a whole lot. So I think these changes are pretty much to try to get her a little bit more relevant in the meta. Also, kind of compensating for the fact that they're nerfing her support item, and she hasn't been in the meta. So if they're nerfing her support item, they're giving her some buffs on top of that to hopefully bring her back into the meta. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I do think that Senna can struggle into some melee support. So if melee supports are coming back into the meta, these buffs might not be enough to make Senna really strong support again, because again, if you're up against a melee support like Alistar, Blitzcrank, Nautilus, and these champions engage on you, you're very immobile. If you're playing Senna as a support specifically, you don't have a lane partner who can keep you alive. So I think these buffs are more so going to help Senna ADC, because again, her support item is getting nerfed. None of the items that you're building as an ADC will be getting damaged. And then, if melee supports are coming back into the meta and they're going to be played more often and they're going to be engaging on Senna, she's going to be safer played as an ADC, where supports can keep her safe compared to playing as a support. If you have a Ezreal next to you and you get engaged on by an Alistar, Ezreal can't really save you. So I think this is a step in the right direction for Senna. Hopefully it helps a little bit, but I see this helping Senna ADC more than Senna support. And speaking of Alistar, Alistar is also getting some buffs, and it's a pretty interesting one. I've actually seen some people starting to play Alistar top, and that's because a lot of his abilities are going to be stronger here. It's kind of an interesting approach when it comes to buffing a melee support, trying to get them back into the meta. You often don't pick melee supports for their damage output, so I don't see how these changes are going to make you want to pick Alistar more often, because it's not like the reason Alistar isn't in the meta right now is because he doesn't do enough damage. I think that he, in the past has just been kind of overshadowed by some of the other melee supports, just because he's an old champion. He has a simple combo. It's easy to, get out of the way of. Uh, and I think he's just a little, outdated, old of a champion, gets outclassed by newer supports. I guess this should help a little bit, because when you are setting up engages as Alistar, or as any engage support really, if you're doing more damage, it just makes it that much easier for your teammates to follow up. So I've seen some people playing Alistar top because his damage is going up, and that's something that you want more in a solo lane rather than as a melee support. But again, it's a buff that can't really help or can't really hurt. It's a step in the right direction, so we might see Alistar be a little bit more commonly seen next patch, between the changes to the support items as well as these buffs to AP ratios and damage and stuff like that. Up next is Maokai, who's getting quite a few nerfs, and as someone who's been playing Maokai Maokai in the support role for a few years now, I feel like I got away with it for a really long time. It seems like Maokai is being played a lot more frequently this season in kind of all roles. It's kind of terrorizing professional play as well. So I got away with it for a really long time, and after it got so popular this season, I kind of figured it was only a matter of time until he saw a nerf. And there's a lot of things that are getting touched here. The base damage on your E is going to be is going to be changed, but the empowered is going to be unchanged. So this one doesn't really impact Maokai support all too much. Your main goal is going to be throwing saplings and brushes to try to control objectives, or try to control the brushes in the lane. So this shouldn't go unchanged. If you're throwing your saplings in non-brushes, you're playing Maokai wrong. But these next two should hurt quite a bit. So damage AP ratio is reduced from 35 to 25, and empowered is reduced from 70 to 50. Also, the slow is going to be reduced. So you're getting less utility, you're getting less damage. I still think Maokai support could have a spot potentially in the meta, because if your team drafts full AD and you still need some AP, it could still be a reliable pick. It's still really good for vision control, even though you're slowing for less and doing less damage. The vision control around objectives is still really good, but this is going to take him out. I think I had him. Yeah, I have him in strong. So this is probably going to bump him all the way down to average. I could see him being probably about a 51% win rate after these nerfs go through. So I think it was needed. He's been terrorizing solo queues, been terrorizing pro play, and I think it was about time. There's also going to be some nerfs to Amumu, health growth reduced, armor growth reduced, and then target HP per second reduced. So these are changes that I think will hurt Amumu as a tank. But the way I look at Amumu's support is, the way that you build him, building Even Shroud into Zonia's, you're playing him to make plays. You want to be able to go into fights, make plays, use your double Q, use your ulti, lock down a bunch of people, try to zonies to keep yourself alive a little bit longer. But your goal isn't to necessarily like soak up a bunch of damage and then live. As a Mumu, sometimes it can be a one-way street, and especially when you're playing him as a support, you don't have as much gold income to be as tanky as like a Mumu jungle, right? So you're not going to be that tanky anyways. And like I said, it is kind of a one-way street, and I like a Mumu support for that reason, for making plays, for going in for your team, and try to set up team fights. So even though he is going to be getting nerfed, as far as how tanky he's going to be, I don't really see it as that much of an issue because when I'm playing a Mumu support, I don't necessarily always pick him because my team needs a front line, especially going to this next patch. Alistar, if my team needs a good beefy front line, no pun intended, for the support, I might be leaning towards Alistar. But if we need someone who's going to make plays, it has a lot more CC, more reliable CC, I might go for something like a Mumu. So this might hurt him a little bit just because he's not going to be as tanky, but I don't think it's going to hurt him too much because he still provides the same amount of CC, and I think that's what makes a Mumu support valuable. All right, and last but not least, we have Thresh. Thresh is another one of those melee tank supports who's been kind of outclassed for a while. I think back to previous metas where we've had a lot of tank supports. Thresh has been relevant because he's a very popular champion and a lot of people like playing him, but he's never been like super strong for a while now. So what they're doing here, kind of a similar approach to what they were doing with Alistar, just bringing more damage overall in his kit. More base damage increase on his flay, more base damage increase on his Q. And it's an interesting approach again to buffing a tank-ish kind of support. Thresh isn't nearly as tanky as Rel, Leona, Alistar, those kind of guys, but he is still technically a tank. It's an interesting approach because again, when I think of picking a tanky support, I want something that tanks a lot, not something that does a lot of damage. But they're taking the same approach as Alistar, just giving him more overall damage. Again, this does help for some reasons. It'll help as far as when you are engaging for your team. If you're doing more damage and you're putting your enemy at a lower HP, it's a lot more encouraging for your team to follow up and try to finish off those kills. So an interesting approach. Again, his support items are going to be getting buffed, and now we have some damage buffs as well. So Thresh might be making his way back into the meta. We'll have to see though. I think this might bump him up like a percentage or so though. All right, so with all of that said, time to go back to the tier list and kind of adjust how these champions might be performing in the next patch. Annie is really broken right now. She already got hotfix after some recent buffs, and she's still sitting at above a 54% win rate. I think some nerfs are coming, but at least from what we've seen in the upcoming patch notes, she should remain unchanged. Yes, her support item is going to be getting nerfed, but that's not going to take her out of broken, so I like her there. Rel apparently is kind of a sleeper OP. She only had, let's see, a 2.39% pick rate in patch 13.3, but she has a 54.64% win rate in D2+. So she's kind of a sleeper OP pick right now. Not a lot of people playing her, but when she is being played, she's performing quite well. So, we're looking at a tank meta potentially. She's already 54% win rate. I'm going to keep Rel up here in broken. Same thing that kind of applies to Rakan. Rakan currently sitting at a 9.54% pick rate, 54% win rate. Tank support's going up. His support item is going to be getting stronger. I like keeping him here. Moving on to the strong tier list. I think Taric is another one of those champions that's already sleeper OP. He's sitting at about a 53% win rate. Tank support's getting stronger. He also works really well into other tank supports. I feel like I'm going to move Taric up into broken. Blitzcrank, I feel like I'm going to keep him here. Blitzcrank is not your traditional tank support. He's more of like a champion that can tank up a bit of damage, but for the most part, you're looking to make picks and pull people into your team. He's not going to provide that front line that I think is the meta we're shifting towards. So I'll keep him here. Vel'Koz and Sona. Let's see. Sona sitting at a 53% win rate. Vel'Koz sitting at a 52% win rate. If this meta shift is as dramatic as I think it's going to be, I see them dropping down a little bit into 50-51. I think Vel'Koz will still be okay because into tanks, you just have such long range that you can keep your distance and avoid getting engaged on. But still, just to be safe here, I think I'm going to drop most enchanters down at least to 1% or so. So, if they are at 53% win rate, they could still be strong at 52. But just to play things super safe here, I'll drop them down. I could see them ending up at around 51% or so. Up next, we have Maokai, who I said is getting a bunch of nerfs here. I don't want to overreact and drop him too far down, but I'll throw him probably 50%-ish. He was kind of the top of 51%. Actually, he's sitting at 53%, correction. So he was actually probably should have been in strong. But I think he's going to get hit pretty hard here, 50-51%. I'll drop him towards the bottom of average here. And I'll kind of do something similar for just every enchanter support. I'll drop them down 1% or so. All of these range supports should be getting a bit of a hit. So just going to be taking all of them, moving them down a little bit. Don't want to overreact too much, but again, just playing it safe. So let me go ahead and move all of these down. That should be all of them except for Bran. And going back, so now we have Bard, who is technically an enchanter support, but he doesn't really have the same playstyle. He's a playmaker. Bard is currently sitting at a 51.72% win rate in D2+. I think Bard's in a really good spot. I don't mind Bard into melee supports, so even if the meta does shift, I like him there. Braum, no changes. Amumu is getting some changes. I'll move him down. Similar to Maokai, I think that they both got some nerfs, but if melee supports stay relevant, they should both stay, average or so. Braum, I'll keep him there. I think I forgot to move Xerath down. Pyke, I'll keep him there. Nautilus, I'll move him up a little bit just because of melee supports. Zillion, we'll move him down. Shaco, we'll move him down just because he's a weird pick. And this is kind of, like I said, just some small changes that we should be seeing. For the most part, just moving all range supports down like 1% or so, trying to move some of the melee supports up a little bit, other than like the Maokai and the Amumu who are getting nerfed. But for the most part, these are the changes that we should be seeing. On top of that, I'll go ahead and move Thresh a little bit up. I'll go ahead and move Alistar a little bit up. Again, meta shift towards melee supports. Both of these guys got buffs, so we should see this kind of shift going on here. As for the bottom here, I think the only thing I'll do is move Leona up. If there is a meta that revolves around tank supports, I feel like she should find her way back into the meta somehow, even if that's just bumping her from like a 49 to a 50% win rate. All these champions down here are so bad right now that even with the meta shift, I think that we shouldn't really be seeing them all too much, especially Yuumi, who, let me go ahead and look, I got to scroll all the way down to see this, but she's sitting at a 41% win rate. So Set, Yuumi, I don't really see too much Set support anymore, but Yuumi, these are two champions that should be on the bench for you. You should never be pulling these champions out in 13.4. All right, then, guys, that is going to wrap up the end of this tier list for supports in patch 13.4. Again, a bit of a meta shift. What I did for the most part is just break down the few buffs and nerfs that we have to a few of the support champions, but also just kind of adjust every enchanter down 1% and a lot of the tanks up 1% for that meta shift that a lot of people assume is coming at 13.4. Anyways, that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you have not done so already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.